The house stood tall, imposing. An air of forgotten grandeur clung to its weathered facade. Jessica felt a thrill course through her, a mixture of excitement and unease. This old house, with its creaking floorboards and dusty chandeliers, was hers and Mark's new beginning. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her voice echoing in the cavernous hall. Mark squeezed her hand, his smile bright. He didn't share her apprehension, not yet. To him, the house was an adventure, a project. Days turned into weeks as they unpacked boxes and settled in. Jessica couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a prickle of awareness on the back of her neck. Shadows seemed to dance at the edge of her vision, and the silence of the house was broken by the occasional creak or groan. One night, lying in bed, Jessica heard it, a whisper, soft and low, just beyond the realm of hearing. It slithered through the darkness, sending a shiver down her spine. The whispers continued, growing bolder each night. They seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, weaving their way into Jessica's dreams, turning them into nightmares. She lost sleep, her nerves fraying with each passing day. Mark, ever the pragmatist, dismissed her concerns. "It's an old house, Jess," he'd say, his voice soothing. "It's bound to make some noises." But Jessica knew better. These weren't the sounds of settling wood or the wind whistling through cracks. These were the sounds of something else, something ancient and malevolent. One night, unable to bear the whispers any longer, Jessica sat bolt upright in bed. The room was ice cold, the air thick with an unseen presence. "Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling. He stirred beside her. "What is it, Jess? Listen." She breathed, her heart pounding in her chest. And then he heard it too, a low, guttural growl emanating from the darkest corner of the room. The growl was fleeting, gone as quickly as it had come, but it was enough to shake Mark's skepticism. He couldn't explain it away as an old house settling. This was different. He held Jessica close, his own fear masked by a veneer of calm. "We'll figure it out," he murmured, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. The next day, Mark searched the house from top to bottom, checking for drafts, loose floorboards, anything that could explain the strange noises. He found nothing. The house held its secrets close. As the days passed, the activity escalated. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut without a breeze. Mark and Jessica would often find themselves staring at each other, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, Jessica stumbled upon a hidden compartment. Inside, she found a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with faded ink. It was a diary chronicling the life and death of the house's previous owner. The diary told a tale of love, betrayal, and ultimately murder. The house's previous owner, a man named Edward, had been driven mad by grief after the death of his beloved wife, Emily. He believed she had been unfaithful, and his jealousy consumed him. One night, in a fit of rage, he had strangled Emily in the very room where Jessica and Mark now slept. He then took his own life, his anguished cries echoing through the house. Reading the diary, Jessica felt a cold dread seep into her bones. The whispers, the noises, the feeling of being watched. It all made sense now. The house was haunted by the spirits of Edward and Emily, their restless souls forever bound to the scene of their tragic demise. As Jessica read further, she came across a passage that made her blood run cold. "Emily," Edward had written, "will be mine for eternity, and anyone who dares to take her place will suffer the same fate." Jessica slammed the diary shut, her breath catching in her throat. She knew then that they were in grave danger. Section 5. The Ghostly Apparition. The haunting intensified after the discovery of the diary. It was as if the spirits were angered by their secret being unearthed. Jessica saw Emily's ghostly figure flitting through the halls, her white gown trailing behind her like a shroud. One evening, as Jessica and Mark were having dinner, the candles in the dining room suddenly sputtered and died, plunging them into darkness. A bone-chilling cold descended upon the room, and the air grew thick with the scent of decay. Then they heard it, Emily's voice, filled with an unspeakable sadness, whispering their names, Jessica, Mark. Panic surged through Jessica. She grabbed Mark's hand, her own clammy with fear. "We need to leave," she whispered urgently. "Now!" They scrambled to their feet and raced towards the front door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if an unseen force was holding it shut. Mark threw his shoulder against the wood, but it wouldn't give. They were trapped. Desperation clawed at Jessica's throat. She could feel the presence of the spirits growing stronger, their malevolence palpable in the air. They had to find a way out, and fast. "The attic!" Mark suddenly exclaimed. There might be another way out. They raced back up the stairs, their hearts pounding in their chests. The attic was dark and dusty, the air thick with the scent of decay. They frantically searched for another exit, their fingers brushing against cobwebs and long-forgotten objects, but there was nothing. They were trapped. Jessica sank to the floor, despair washing over her. She knew then that they were not going to escape this house alive. The spirits would claim them, just as they had claimed countless others before. Suddenly, Mark grabbed her hand, his eyes gleaming with a desperate hope. "The diary," he said, his voice urgent. "It mentioned a curse. Maybe we can break it." Together, they frantically scanned the pages of the diary, searching for any clue that could help them escape their fate. Finally, they found it, a passage that described how Edward had bound Emily's spirit to the house, using a silver locket that contained a lock of her hair. The locket, the diary said, was hidden in the garden, buried beneath the old oak tree. Armed with this knowledge, Jessica and Mark raced out of the house and into the overgrown garden. The wind howled around them as if the spirits themselves were trying to prevent them from breaking the curse. They found the oak tree easily, its gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. Mark grabbed a shovel and began to dig, the earth yielding reluctantly beneath his frantic movements. Suddenly the air grew deathly still. Jessica spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. Standing behind them, bathed in an ethereal light, were the ghostly figures of Edward and Emily. Edward's eyes burned with a cold fury, while Emily's face was etched with an unspeakable sadness. "You will not escape us," Edward hissed, his voice a raspy whisper. "This house is our prison, and now it shall be yours too." Mark continued to dig, his movements frantic. He knew that their lives depended on finding the locket. Jessica stood frozen in place, her eyes locked on the ghostly figures before her. Suddenly, the shovel struck something hard. Mark dropped to his knees and clawed at the earth, his fingers closing around a small tarnished silver locket. He held it up, his hand trembling. The locket gleamed faintly in the moonlight, and Jessica could feel a surge of power emanating from it. "Emily," Mark whispered, his voice filled with both fear and pity. "I release you from this curse. Rest in peace." As he spoke, he ripped the locket open, scattering the lock of hair to the wind. A blinding white light erupted from the locket, engulfing the ghostly figures of Edward and Emily. Jessica and Mark shielded their eyes from the glare. When the light faded, the spirits were gone. The air was still, the silence broken only by the sound of their own ragged breathing. Jessica and Mark clung to each other, their bodies trembling with relief and exhaustion. They had escaped the curse of the house, but they knew that they would never forget the horrors they had witnessed within its walls. The house stood silent, its secrets buried once more. But some wounds, Jessica knew, ran too deep to ever truly heal. The whispers in the walls may have been silenced, but their echoes would haunt her dreams forever.